Good morning and welcome to another in the ISM Lunch and Learn webinar series. Today we're going to be taking a look at sales order. Our presenter is Mr. Robert Rusinello. He will be taking us on a deeper dive into the sales order module, so above and beyond common day practices. Welcome everyone. You will be muted during the presentation. We will open up the lines for questions at the end. If you do come up with a question during the broadcast, you can simply utilize the chat window and type it in there, and we will review all those at the end as well. So with that, I'm going to turn everything over to Robert. Robert, thank you and welcome.
Excellent. Thank you, Sherry. Okay, so we're going to look at maybe some tasks in the sales order module that most folks are not aware are available. Specifically, we'll be looking at Dropships, linking POs and SOs, reviewing customer last purchase maintenance, as well as purchase control maintenance. So most of these features, again, we get a lot of questions from clients on how to do Dropships, or you may be looking to create POs for multiple sales orders. So there's a lot of integration between those two modules in the system. Likewise for sales folks, they may not be aware that they can research customer history fairly easily when they're actually in a sales order. So if a customer calls and says, hey, I might be interested in purchasing this specific item, you can actually quickly take a look to see what they've purchased in the past and maybe make some recommendations. And finally, there's some functionality in the system that allows you to say, hey, we're only going to sell you these goods, or we're not going to sell you these goods. You may have some customers that are overseas, and by law, you're not allowed to sell them some items. We can actually put restrictions in the system that allow you to, or allow them to only purchase certain items, or allow them to not purchase items. So let's jump into the system and let's start digging into some of these actions. First one, Dropships. So the system has the ability to handle Dropships. That is, you sell an item to a customer, but you don't sell it from your inventory. You actually place a PO to your vendor to ship the items directly to your customer. Okay, so a traditional dropship. What clients normally do is they create a sales order in the sales order system. They create a separate purchase order in the purchase order system, and without using the functionality I'm about to show you, those two will be completely isolated, separated, and you would need someone to manage the process. What we're able to do is actually specify in the sales order that those lines are drop shipped, and when we create a PO, we can specify what sales orders that PO is being created for. Let's jump into the system and let's look at the sales order module. And we're going to create a new order for a customer. I like using customer ABF. And I'm going to go to the Lines tab and I'm going to sell them the first item in our item list. By the way, we're in the ABC company. Great for creating these types of test transactions. All of our customers have access to this company. So the customers and the items that I'm showing are the same. So we have an item code that we're selling them. We're going to be selling them 2 of these at $84. And what you may not be aware of is down below, there is a field called drop ship. I can go ahead and bring that field up here, and it's now a DS. I can check this off. That's going to tell the system that this item is being drop shipped or is being facilitated by your vendor. Now, one thing I do want to mention, when the system looks at this item as a drop ship, it means that it escapes your inventory system altogether. It says, look, your vendor is facilitating the sale, so you never take title to the goods. So I'm not going to show this coming into your inventory and going out of it. So we're connecting the sales order module to the purchase order module, but the goods are not coming into your system through the inventory module. So we've treated this line as a drop ship. I'm going to go ahead and continue with the sales order. And I'm now going to go, and actually, what you may have missed is I clicked a button that says I want to generate a PO. At this point, what the system did was it opened up the purchase order module for me. It created a PO 100055. The order type, you may be used to standard purchase orders. This is a drop ship purchase order. And the sales order number of 216 came in as well. When we go to the lines tab, here is the item that's being drop shipped, again with the sales order number that our sales order contained. So as you could see, we can actually create one PO to a vendor with multiple different sales orders. So you don't have to necessarily have a one-to-one relationship. You can actually have multiple sales orders that create one PO to your vendor, and your vendor facilitates all of those drop ships. So we now have a drop ship sales order. We now have a drop ship purchase order. Okay, what happens now is at some point you've got to get notification from your vendor that they've shipped the items to your customer. It's only then that you can record revenues and you can invoice your customer. It's only then that you can create the receipt of invoice for your vendor. So let's say 2 weeks go by, your vendor emails you an invoice that says we've fulfilled your order for your customer and we've shipped it to them. At that point, you can go in, you can do your invoice. Since this is a drop ship, you'll not be able to do a shipping data entry. You can only do an invoice data entry because, again, there's no inventory aspect to this transaction. So we're going to go in, we're going to pull order 216, and our vendor shipped both quantity of 2 of this item. And I'm going to go in and update the batch. And I'm going to show you one big change in this process. Our ABC company is in the year 2020. And so one big change with dropships is when you get your daily transaction register, it's going to look a little bit different. We're still going to have AR because we are billing the customer, and we're going to have sales. So we have a debit to AR, credit to sales. What you don't see here is a debit to cost of goods sold and a credit to inventory, because again, there's no inventory aspect to this. So the other change we're going to find is when we simultaneously proceed to the purchase order module, if we try to do a receipt of goods on this specific PO that was a drop ship, it's actually not even here. We can't do a receipt of goods for a drop ship PO because there's no inventory aspect. Okay, if you were to punch up that number, it's going to tell you that you're not able to do a receipt of goods on a dropship order. So we're forced to do a receipt of invoice, and there we go, 10055. I'm going to punch up my invoice number. I'm going to bill the 2 units, and I'm going to post my batch. And I'm going to point out the next big change with dropships is on the PO side. When we post our dropship, instead of debiting inventory and crediting purchases clearing, we don't necessarily have any type of purchases clearing involved here. Our journal transaction is going to look like a debit to purchases or cost of goods sold and a credit to AP. Okay, so no inventory involved. So you could see that on the sales side, we have a credit to sales. On the receipt of invoice side, we have a debit to purchases or cost of goods sold. So from an income statement perspective, life is good. Okay, we've got both our sales and cost of goods sold happening with both types of postings. The one thing I want to mention with dropships is you definitely want to post both sides of the transaction together. Okay, if you end up posting the sales to October and the receipt of invoice to November, you're going to have sales happening in October. You're going to have cost of goods sold happening in November. There's going to be a mismatch of revenue, and your financials are going to be misstated or distorted. So once you get a notification from your vendor that they've fulfilled your order, it's always good to perform both transactions in the same period so that our financials won't be distorted. Okay, so again, big difference. A lot of clients usually bring that inventory into the system. They have to do a receipt of goods and then a receipt of invoice, and then go through shipping. With dropships, you can alleviate several steps and simply rely on your vendor giving you the information that's needed, in which you'll then invoice or bill your customer and create a receipt of invoice for your vendor. So the next stop is linking sales orders to purchase orders. Now, again, we have the ability to create a sales order, and I'll use my favorite customer, ABF. And this will not be a dropship, it'll be a standard order. I'm going to buy my favorite item. I'm going to buy 3 of them. Again, I'm not going to make it a dropship sales order. However, even though it's not a dropship order, I may be low on this item. Now, it does tell me I have 959 on hand, okay, when I'm over the quantity ordered field. But let's say I was running low. I can immediately go to my totals tab, hit generate PO, and it will create a PO on the fly with the information, kind of similar to what we just saw with a dropship PO, only it's not a dropship. This is just a regular PO for inventory. So here I have quantity of 3 ready to go to my vendor. Now you wonder, how does it know what vendor to create a PO for? Well, in item maintenance for this specific item, it will create a PO to the primary vendor. If you had multiple, if you had a sales order with multiple items, you can create multiple purchase orders for whatever is listed on that sales order that you need to purchase. So a lot of great integration between both modules that allow you to quickly create a purchase order based on sales order information. Now the next task we're going to look at is customer last purchase maintenance. So you're a salesman, you've got a customer on the phone, and it is customer ABF, and they're looking to purchase some items. You've got certain buttons up here. If you haven't looked at these, certainly it's worth just seeing what options you have. You've noticed that I have gone into this item. Once I have an item in here, I can go back and I can actually jump right into item maintenance without having to open up a separate window. If that item, if we see we didn't have any on stock, I can even make a recommendation to my customer that they may be interested in some other items. And we also see how much of those items you have on hand. So there's lots of great buttons here that that actually go to other areas of the system by you simply entering in the item code in question. Now, let's go ahead and close out of here. The first button here, we've got an alias for this customer. And here's our customer item last purchase history list. This is going to tell us what we've sold to this customer in the past. The I is for invoice, the O is for order. We can see that we have open orders on hand. We see that we have some quotes on file, and we can see what we've shipped with the I's, with the invoice. So this is kind of a nice quick way for you to have a snapshot as to what this client has been ordering. And that way you can make recommendations on a similar type order, or if they haven't purchased something in a long time, you can certainly make the recommendation that way. And you also see how many of those they've purchased. So a very nice tool. Another thing while we're here, anywhere you have a magnifying glass which opens up a window, you'll have a little Excel button on the side. If you're not familiar, you can simply click on that Excel button. That will bring this list over into Excel for you in a nice grid fashion. And finally, purchase control maintenance. So as I mentioned earlier, purchase control maintenance is a tool that allows you to decide if you'll allow a customer to purchase items or not purchase items. That's controlled first through sales order options. There's an area for purchase control maintenance. We can check that off. We can say select items based on either customer or ship to state. And do you want to allow customers to buy something or not allow customers to buy something? I'm going to set this to be items allowed. And when I do that, under sales order setup, there is an area called purchase control maintenance. And if I select my ABF customer, I can indicate what items they're allowed to buy. So if you want to restrict your salespeople to only selling these items to certain customers, you can populate this list. And if I try to sell to this customer an item that they're not allowed to purchase, the system is going to notify me. So they're able to buy these two items. Let's go back out to sales order entry. Let's go ahead and create an order for ABF. And if I try to sell an item that they're not allowed to buy, we immediately get this window that says, you know, they're not allowed to buy this item. Click yes to allow, or click no to clear. So this is a security feature. You can essentially stop folks from selling them altogether. In my case, I have the ability to override the selection, so I actually get a window that says, hey, they're not allowed to buy, but do you want to allow it? And if I hit yes, I continue. If I hit no, it disappears. And if I'm able to sell them what they can buy, then it's pretty much business as usual. So again, that feature is very nice if you're dealing with chemicals, if you're dealing with perishables, where certain countries have certain rules. You can actually specify that those customers either can only buy certain items, or maybe they can't buy certain items. And this will essentially give you the control to set that up so that your salespeople are not having to either look at Excel or look at sheets of paper to figure out what they can and can't sell. So very nice features, you know, that most folks are just not aware that the system can do. Now I'm going to mention one more item that's been out in the latest version 2017, and that's anywhere you have batches. So in invoice data entry or in shipping data entry, if I go into invoice data entry and I create a batch for my invoices, and you can see that I have several batches already in place. I have in batch number 18, I happen to have one invoice. And I'm going to go ahead and create another invoice in batch number 18. And we'll go ahead and sell our orange customer 2 of our favorite desk set. And so now I have 2 invoices sitting in this one batch. Well, it may be that this one sale is related to October while this sale is going to be related to November. And I don't want to post both of those transactions together. So I now have the ability to highlight my transaction, in this case my invoice, and click on this little button here, which is a batch transfer button. I can go ahead and click that button, select the batch that I want that transaction to go to, and now in batch number 18 I only have that one transaction. If I go to batch 21 that previously did not have anything, I now have my invoice to the orange company. Okay, this feature in 2017 is actually available anywhere you have batches, whether it be receipt of goods, in the AP module, under cash receipts or invoice data entry in the AR module. So it's a nice little feature that allows you to move transactions from one batch to the other. And hopefully that gives you an idea of some additional features that you may not be aware are available in the system. With that said, Sherry, I'll certainly open the floor to questions. Take a look to see.
Perfect. Let me unmute the lines. Lines are now unmuted. I do not see any questions in the chat window or the question window. Do we have any questions out there? Okay, Robert, we are not getting any questions. If anything comes up, please know that you can always reach out to me at AM for account manager, am@goism.com. And thank you for your time and attendance today. Robert, thank you for presenting such an insightful webinar with all of the little tips and tricks in there. Everyone keep an eye on our calendar and please join us for future Lunch and Learn webinars. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.